Okay, let's dive into this one. January 2nd, 2018, May, Pearl, Texas. A 911 call from Sandra Garner.
Whoa.
Wow. The distress is just immediate, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You hear her reporting her husband, John, shot by an intruder.
911, what is your emergency? I need the police. I listen to John. No, hurry, please. I think he's still alive. He's making noises. Oh, John! Baby, wake up!
Got a telephone call from the Ellis County Sheriff's Office saying, hey, we've had a shooting in your city.
Her husband's been shot by an unknown male, I believe, that had broken into the house.
Police! When I got there, I met a deputy from Ellis County.
Where you at, the bedroom?
Please help me.
And we see the body on the floor.
His name is John.
John what?
Garner.
Excuse me, man, back up on me.
He's still warm.
Is he alive?
No, ma'am.
Come on, sweet.
Just raw panic.
Yeah, trying to process something horrific right as it's happening.
And the scene police found, well, it matched that trauma. Especially considering, they just celebrated their 18th anniversary the night before.
Right. Suddenly, police are there, John's dead, and Sandra's the only witness. Understandably distraught, trying to explain it all.
Exactly. So the initial steps seem standard. Gunshot residue test for Sandra, collecting her clothes.
Then hours of questioning start at the sheriff's office. But pretty quickly, you start to see things that, well, don't quite fit the picture of just a grieving widow.
That's putting it mildly. Her story was very detailed. A masked intruder, white male, claiming John ruined his life.
And demanding money, right? She even mentioned John supposedly keeping huge amounts of cash at home.
Yeah, she quoted a figure, I think, $188,000 the last time she counted it, supposedly.
Which is, in itself, a lot of cash to have lying around. But here's the bit that really junks out, that instruction.
Ah, yes. The intruder telling her to sit down and count to 100 before calling 911.
Exactly. And threatening to come back and kill her if he heard sirens sooner. It just feels weird,
Yeah.
Almost staged.
It absolutely raises eyebrows. It's not what you'd typically expect in that kind of violent encounter. It immediately makes you question the whole story.
Right. So that's what we're digging into here, isn't it? Looking at these inconsistencies, the questions that pop up from the police reports, the court testimony.
Precisely. So maybe let's start with their background, Sandra and John. Give us some context before that night.
Okay. So Sandra was 13 years older. They met at work in Paris, Texas. 2 years later, they eloped to Vegas, get married on New Year's Eve. What was the dynamic like, based on what we've seen?
Well, despite the age gap, sources suggest they seemed pretty solid. John was described as a, quote, tough boss.
Fired people, didn't shy away from that.
Right. And also apparently drank heavily, was on antidepressants, so maybe some internal struggles there.
Seems plausible. But personally, it sounded like a partnership. John became like a second dad to Sandra's son, Wes.
And then crucially, when Sandra got her MS diagnosis in 2014, John really stepped up, became her caretaker, her rock, some said.
Yeah, that detail about her feeling suicidal like a burden, and John saying, if you do that, I'll kill myself too. That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. Suggests a very deep, maybe even codependent connection.
And then they moved to May Pearl in 2016, closer to family. John's dad living right across the street.
The backyard was a gathering spot. Even John's cousin's wife considered Sandra family. So on the surface,
yeah,
happy, connected.
But that surface starts to crack pretty fast when you look at how people reacted after the shooting, right?
Definitely. When Sandra first told her story after leaving the sheriff's office, some of the Garner family, they weren't buying it. There was immediate doubt.
And then her son Wes shows up at the sheriff's office.
Yes, and his conversation with Lieutenant Thompson was pretty significant.
He actually asked if his own mother could have done it early on.
He did, openly wondering if she could be a killer. I mean, that's shocking. And you can see how that would immediately shift the police focus.
Absolutely. So suspicion lands on Sandra pretty hard, pretty fast. Police searched the house, the garage.
And her Mustang, locked inside the detached garage. This becomes important.
Because when they asked for the keys?
Her reaction wasn't great, according to the reports. Wes went to get them, and she apparently threw her fork down, got angry, refused initially.
Which again raises questions. Why resist searching your own car after your husband's been murdered?
Exactly. And those questions got much louder 3 days later.
That's when they searched the Mustang again, right?
Right. And under the front seat, they find a .38 caliber pistol,
The murder weapon.
the murder weapon, wrapped in wet towels inside a plastic bag.
And registered to Sandra, a gift from John.
Correct. The wet towels, the bag. It suggests someone tried to wipe it down, maybe remove evidence.
But placing it under the seat of her locked car, it's a direct link. And crucially,
No fingerprints. No DNA on the gun itself.
so gloves or someone else entirely,
Those are the possibilities. But Sandra denied putting it there, flat out denied it.
which directly contradicts finding the gun registered to her in her car.
But then came the digital evidence, the part that's really hard to explain away.
The internet searches on her iPad and phone just days before the murder.
Yeah. Searches like how to kill somebody in their sleep.
And she clicked a link, didn't she? 16 ways to kill somebody and not get caught.
She did. I mean, when investigators find that, it's incredibly difficult not to see that as pointing towards premeditation, or at least exploring the idea very seriously.
It puts her initial story under immense pressure. But the investigation itself, it wasn't exactly flawless, was it?
No, far from it. The police chief at the time, Boyd Norton, admitted this was his first murder investigation.
First one. Wow.
And he acknowledged mistakes. Big ones.
Like the crime scene not being properly secured, first responders going into the bedroom.
Exactly. Potentially contaminating everything. And Sandra's hands weren't bagged right away.
So the gunshot residue test.
They only found 3 tiny specks on her left arm days later, which isn't much, especially if you just fired a .38. You'd expect more, likely on both hands.
These aren't small errors, are they? They create reasonable doubt.
For sure. And then there's the issue with Chief Norton's photos.
Oh, right. The crime scene photos he took on his personal phone just disappeared.
Vanished, which is bizarre. So the prosecution had to use photos taken like 8 hours later by the sheriff's crime scene unit.
And they didn't even fingerprint the Mustang's door handle where the gun was found.
Nope. Another missed opportunity. You can see why the defense had a field day with this stuff.
And there was that timing issue too, right? How long it took police to respond to the 911 call.
Yeah, a bit of a discrepancy. Sandra seemed to think it took longer. The chief recalled about 15 minutes. In these situations, timing is everything.
So you have all this circumstantial stuff pointing at Sandra, the gun, the searches. But the prosecution really struggled with motive, didn't they?
They really did. Why would she kill John? He was her caregiver, especially with MS getting worse. It didn't quite add up that why was missing.
Which always leaves a door open. And the defense, Tom Pappas, he pushed that door open towards someone else.
Towards Wes, Sandra's son.
Pointing out he might need money, maybe thought he was in John's will, although that wasn't confirmed.
Right. But beyond the defense just suggesting it, Wes was the first one to cast suspicion on his mom.
True. He knew the house, the dogs.
And now, later on, Sandra actually believes Wes killed John. It's a complete turnaround.
That's a huge shift. And what about the timing of those web searches again?
Okay, yeah, this is interesting. They happened between 11 p.m. and midnight, 4 days before the murder.
But Sandra and John usually went to bed around 3 p.m.
And Wes was at their house that night. So who was actually doing the searching? It raises a serious question.
And Wes's behavior with the police seemed almost too helpful to some.
Well, he readily gave information about his mom, her gun, where she kept it in the Mustang.
And the gun was found exactly where he suggested it might be, under the seat.
Precisely. It's a detail that certainly stands out. Looks convenient, maybe.
Then the alibi issue. That really fell apart, didn't it?
It did. Initially, he said he was home watching Netflix, drinking beer. Records seemed to back it up. But they realized the time zone on the records was wrong. Once corrected, his alibi for the actual time of the murder evaporated. His whereabouts were unknown.
That's a massive hole in his story.
It is. Yet, the prosecution insisted Wes couldn't have done it. Said his personality wasn't suited for violence, couldn't handle blood.
Which feels, I don't know, subjective. Not exactly hard evidence.
Not really. And they also argued, well, wouldn't Sandra recognize her own son, even masked?
But Sandra's explanation, the trauma, the shock, could that cloud recognition in a moment like that?
It's certainly possible. Trauma does strange things to memory and perception.
So it goes to trial. Sandra decides to testify, even though her lawyer maybe wasn't keen.
Always a huge risk. And her testimony was reportedly difficult.
Struggled with questions, especially about the web searches. Claimed memory loss.
Yeah. The jury would have been watching that very closely, her demeanor, her answers.
And after just 3 hours,
The verdict came back. Not guilty.
imagine that moment for her. After 21 months in jail, just release.
An unbelievable emotional swing. Legally, she was free.
But that legal outcome didn't mean closure for the Garner family, did it?
Not at all. Most of them remained convinced she was guilty. Watching her walk free was incredibly painful for them, added to their grief.
And then, adding another strange layer, Sandra moved back into the house.
The same house where John was murdered. Yeah. She said she wanted to be close to his memory.
But living right across from John's parents, who believe she did it,
Yeah.
it's got to be incredibly tense and just odd to many.
It's definitely an unusual choice, and it highlights the other chilling possibility.
If Sandra didn't do it,
Then the real killer is still out there, which raises concerns for her safety, too.
absolutely. And the family fallout. Profound. Sandra and her daughter Andrea are estranged from Wes now.
Right. Sandra said she feels deeply hurt, that her love for him has changed. Understandable, given he pointed the finger at her.
And through all of this, Sandra insists she's innocent, emphasizes how much she relied on John, how close they were.
She's never wavered from that denial, but legally the chapter is closed.
Because of double jeopardy, right? She can't be tried again for this no matter what.
Correct. Even if new evidence surfaced or she confessed tomorrow, the not guilty verdict stands for that specific charge. That's how the system works.
So we're left with this deeply unsettling picture. A not guilty verdict, yes, but so many questions hanging over John Garner's death.
We've walked through the evidence, the doubts, the flawed investigation. It's a lot to take in.
It really shows the complexity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A bungled investigation, maybe a setup, a family just torn apart by it all.
Absolutely. Suspicion, grief, anger. It's devastating.
And it leaves us with that final thought, really. In a case like this, with so much uncertainty, what does justice even look like? You have the legal verdict, but does it feel like the truth was found?
It's tough when an investigation has that many holes and the consequences are so permanent for everyone. It makes you wonder, what do you make of it all, looking back at the evidence and the way things played out?
Help them say not guilty, please. And I know people think I'm crazy for wanting to be here, but I just want to be as close to him as I can.
Sandra Garner is now free to spend time with what remains of her family. She knows others still see her as a killer who got away with it. In the eyes of the law, she is not guilty, and the case against her is forever closed.
Under the law, you cannot be charged with this crime again, even if you say you did it. So let me ask you, did you kill your husband?
No. Man was the love of my life. I told you he was all I had. He was going to take care of me for the rest of my life. Without him, I have nobody. No, I didn't kill my husband.